World of Color has been a staple at Disney California Adventure since the 2010s, and for the Disney 100 celebration in 2023, they debuted a new variant of the World of Color show called World of Color 1. So it's a completely different show from the original World of Color, but it uses the same fountains and the same location, obviously, as the original World of Color. This isn't the first time Disney has debuted an alternate show for World of Color, but today will be the first time in this channel's history that we will be reviewing any iteration of World of Color. I figured I should make a video about this version before it goes away. Disney is debuting another World of Color show for the 70th anniversary celebration of Disneyland Park later this year in May. So we're going to take a look back at World of Color 1, because once it switches over to World of Color Happiness, there's a chance that World of Color 1 may never come back, and I'm kind of okay with that. Before we get started, please like this video, please leave a comment down below, let me know what your favorite World of Color show is. There's been a handful of them. Obviously, we have the holiday World of Color. There was World of Color Celebrate for the 60th anniversary back in the day. Obviously, the original World of Color show. They also had like a Halloween World of Color. I don't even know if they still do that one, to be honest. And of course, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. At the time of this recording, we are working our way to 8,000 subscribers, so I would greatly appreciate your support. Thank you so much, everybody. One of the first things that I noticed about World of Color 1 is that it is presented by Pandora Jewelry. So it has an ad sponsor, just like Tron Lifecycle Run at Magic Kingdom. I believe this was the first World of Color show to have a sponsorship, as far as I'm aware. I could be wrong, but that is a little tacky. It is a little strange. Like, Wondrous Journeys was the sister show for World of Color 1, because it was the firework show that debuted for the Disney 100 celebration, and Wondrous Journeys did not have an ad sponsor, so that is just a little strange. When World of Color first debuted, it was in front of Paradise Pier, and if you know me, you know that I'm not a fan of Pixar Pier, which was the refurbishment of Paradise Pier, which opened in 2018. Pixar Pier is just a terrible background for any of the World of Color shows, because it is a Pixar-specific land, and World of Color is not a Pixar-specific show, so it's just very messy, in my opinion. I am a big hater of Pixar Pier. One of my most popular videos on this channel is about my hatred for Pixar Pier. But Paradise Pier was just a much more of a blank canvas for World of Color to be in front of, and the same would have been true for World of Color 1. But overall, I was very impressed with the Disney 100 celebration. I thought it was handled very, very well. So I'm pretty optimistic for the 70th. Like, we got the fireworks show with Wondrous Journeys, we got a World of Color show with World of Color 1. They added Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which is one of my favorite rides at the entire resort. And overall, the vibes in the park were great. They added these fountains in front of Sleeping Beauty Castle, and I think they were beautiful. So I hope they fix them, because at the time of this recording, they have not been running for a while. It really, really bothers me. I really love those fountains. It reminds me of the fountains at King's Island or King's Dominion, and I love those parks. But back to the World of Color fountains. Any World of Color show has wonderful timing with the lights and the music. It's less reliant on projections than the fireworks shows, because it's water based, so there's like no hard surfaces to project on other than the water itself, and there's no like physical set pieces like Fantasmic, of course. So I'm probably not going to be able to mention every single time in the show when the fountains are timed wonderfully with the music, because that's basically the entire time, and I really enjoy when that happens. That's really satisfying. So I'll point out the biggest standouts when we reach them. The World of Color fountains have 4 water screens. There's 3 big ones in the back that kind of line up together to create one long massive screen, and then there's a smaller one in the front that pops up to like focus on a specific character or a small little moment. Sometimes they jump back and forth between the front screen and the larger back water screens, and I think that's really effective when they do that, and World of Color 1 uses those screens as well. And obviously all of these fountains are very, very beautiful. So we're gonna dig into World of Color 1, starting with the intro. Just like the original World of Color show, World of Color 1 opens with slanted fountains. But these are rainbow colored, which is pretty cool. I do feel like it is a reference to the original World of Color, which I do appreciate. It opens with a Walt Disney quote.
My greatest reward is to have the public appreciate and accept what I've done all these years. That is a great reward.
One man, one dream. 100 years ago, Walt Disney set ripples of happiness and imagination in motion. He showed us how little ripples can become great waves. It just takes one.
And the narration feels very, very Disney. It almost reminds me of World of Color Celebrate. Was a very interesting show. But obviously this show in particular was designed to celebrate 100 years of the Disney company. So it makes 100% sense. And unlike World of Color Celebrate, this one is a lot less heavy-handed, and it's much more natural, kind of like Disneyland Forever, which is the fireworks show. So the overarching theme of World of Color 1 is that it only takes one person to start a wave. In the case of Disney, it was Walt Disney who created the Disney Empire. One man created a wave, you know? So the theme song for World of Color 1, which is very, very good, we're going to discuss this, but the lyrics just tie into how it just takes one person to start a wave. And obviously that's very fitting because these World of Color fountains are made of water, just like waves. That's crazy. Right before the theme song starts playing, you'll notice a bowing fountain, which is really cute. It's one fountain. There's a lot of visuals throughout this entire show where it's just one fountain, obviously with World of Color 1. It also ties into 1 with 100 years of Disney. I did like the perspective that they took with this show, but I really, really wish they stuck with it more. Like the intro and the finale come very full circle, just like any other nighttime spectacular with Disney. But World of Color 1 loses its way throughout various points in the show, which we're going to discuss. But this intro sequence is absolutely one of the strongest parts of the show. As I said, this theme song is absolutely incredible. I really love listening to it. I think it hits better when you're actually watching the show in person compared to just listening to the track, but I think it plays really, really well in the environment that it was meant to be played in, so that's ultimately what matters the most. In this intro sequence, you're gonna see Mirabel from Encanto, Miguel from Coco, and Joe from Soul. Those are the three first characters you see. They're followed by a few other characters, all of which have a major sequence in this show. Notably, in the intro, there is no Star Wars characters and there's no Marvel characters. And those two franchises both have sequences in this show, but they're completely absent in the intro, which we will discuss later. Ultimately, I think Joe from Soul and Miguel from Coco are the two best fits for the story and the themes of World of Color 1. Like, I'm not really sure how Mirabel starts a wave. Like, her entire story is that she was left out from her family, and then coming to terms with that doesn't mean she's not part of the family. Just because she didn't have a power, that doesn't make her any less special, you know? So I'm not really sure how that ties into starting a wave, like Walt Disney, like Joe, or like Miguel. Miguel is another character that ties into family, but the type of character Miguel is just fits better with World of Color 1 and the story that it is trying to tell compared to Mirabel. But that being said though, these first three characters are the strongest characters that represent the story of World of Color 1. Like the other ones, it's kind of a stretch. I also don't like how it's a frozen picture of them that you see. World of Color 1 does this multiple times. It's just a lot less interesting to look at a picture of Miguel compared to video of Miguel doing something. Like, you have these wonderful magical water screens that were a spectacle when Fantasmic debuted in the 90s, and they're still a spectacle today if you watch World of Color or Fantasmic, of course. So why are you just using it to project a photo? That's so lame. So lame. And World of Color 1 does it a lot, and it's really, really frustrating. This is a nighttime spectacular. It's supposed to be a spectacle. You gotta give me more than just a photo of a character, you know? But this is just the intro, so I'm gonna tear into the show when it does it later. But overall, I think this intro sequence is very well done. Right after the intro, you go straight into the Pocahontas sequence. This is actually a very great first scene for World of Color 1. It's a very literal discussion about starting ripples and waves and the story of Pocahontas.
The ripples. So small at first, then look how they grow.
but someone has to start them.
There's like two different sections in the Pocahontas sequence. It starts with Grandmother Willow, and then it goes into a musical sequence with Pocahontas. The thing is, the original World of Color show, which I don't know if you can tell, but I like the original World of Color way more than I like World of Color 1. The Pocahontas scene in World of Color is way better than the Pocahontas scene in World of Color 1. You can really see that when you put the two musical sequences side by side. The music is just so much stronger in the original Pocahontas sequence, and the lighting and the colors are way more beautiful. It just feels much more emotional and much more well constructed compared to what World of Color did. I also feel like it's a little longer in terms of the musical sequence, so it's just way better. Like, I'm sure they picked Pocahontas because of the discussion about starting ripples and waves, but it's kind of silly on paper that they picked a franchise that already had representation in the original World of Color show. So it's a little goofy, but I understand why they went with it, especially right after the intro. Pocahontas has a great transition into the Encanto sequence. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a big fan of the movie. I know a lot of people are. I know it was a smash hit for Disney, but it's just, I didn't connect with it. I did only watch it once though, so maybe I should give it another shot. The lighting is really cool on the house when the sequence first starts, and we already had the discussion about Mirabelle as a character. I don't really feel like she ties into what World of Color 1 is. Like, I feel like they included Encanto because it was a popular film that was also recent. Like, obviously Encanto did not exist when the original World of Color show debuted. The song they picked for Encanto is called Waiting on a Miracle. I'm not gonna lie, I have no memory of the song in the film. Like, I respect that they didn't go with Bruno because obviously that was the most popular song, and that would just have nothing to do with starting a wave like Walt Disney and the rest of the show. My favorite song in the movie was actually called Surface Pressure. I think it was called Surface Pressure, so it's kind of a shame they didn't go with that. The lighting on the bouncing fountains is really cool when she sings Steadfast and Steady.
Come on, I'm ready. I've been patient and steadfast and steady.
I'm a big fan of that, but again, I don't think Mirabelle's character about fitting into a family that has magical powers doesn't really fit in with making waves. But I guess it depends on who you ask. That's just my interpretation. In my opinion, just like every other one of my videos, this is my opinion. But unlike Mirabelle, in the next sequence, we have Remy from Ratatouille. And I think Remy is a perfect character for the themes of this show. Like, Buddy is passionate about cooking. He loves cooking, and his passion made waves. At the end of the movie, he had his own restaurant, you know? A rat had a restaurant. That's a pretty big wave. I'd argue that a rat creating a restaurant is more impressive than a man creating a corporate behemoth, but that's just my opinion. The Eiffel Tower at the beginning of the sequence is kind of ugly, in my opinion. It's a little goofy. It reminds me of how fountains in World of Color Season of Light create a Christmas tree. I also think the Christmas tree looks a little goofy in that show as well. Anyway, this Ratatouille sequence recreates the best moments of the Ratatouille ride in Epcot in Paris, which is kind of funny. Like, it has the little chase sequence. I like when it becomes like a little abstract and it just has gray fountains being chased by orange fountains. Like, that's pretty cute. That's fun. And then they obviously have Remy being chased on the literal water screens where you can actually see Remy again. Cooking imagery and the music is really cute. The sequence ends with a quote from Ego. A great artist can come from anywhere, but I feel like that quote kind of comes out of nowhere. I feel like it should have connected to the beginning of the sequence. They could have reworked it so they had Ego at the beginning and the end of the sequence to bring it full circle. I feel like that was kind of a missed opportunity. The sequence ends with Remy throwing a tomato at the water screen, and then it goes all dark. I'm not a big fan of nighttime spectaculars that have transitions like this where it just goes dark in between sequences. Like, I feel like you can have a more natural transition from one to the other, kind kind of like the Pocahontas sequence into the Encanto sequence. So that's definitely room for improvement. But overall, the Ratatouille sequence is one of the better ones in World of Color 1. It's kind of crazy that he didn't get anything in the original World of Color, now that I think about it. But up next is the Soul sequence. Once again, awful transition into it. Soul is a great movie in my opinion. I love Joe's character, and just like Remy, I feel like he's also a great fit for World of Color 1. He's perfect. My boy is passionate about music, specifically jazz music. I love how when he's on the water screen at the piano, the fountains have ripples coming away from him. Like, that's a really cool image. Probably one of my favorites in the show. Just like Remy, Joe pursuing his passion is him starting his wave. And he's literally a teacher as well. So like, just the fact of being a teacher, you make waves, you know, you have an impact. So obviously this sequence has a big moment with jazz. I'm not a big fan of jazz music. That's just my opinion. So in terms of music, it's not my favorite in the show. I'm actually going to give you a little theme park nerd lore right here. I was a band kid in high school. I did play in jazz band, and that was by far my least favorite band to play in. Like, all the other bands were a lot of fun. Jazz is just not for me. But I did play trumpet. I do kind of vibe when the horns kick in the sequence right here. That's a total vibe. I also love the spotlights on the coaster. I like that they added lights on the entire roller coaster. It's really, really cool. It works really well for pretty much every World of Color show. And obviously the wheel itself is covered in lights, and they use it really, really well. I forgot to mention, but in the intro, when they say something about a circle, wheel becomes a massive circle. That's just perfect. But I do love the lighting on the wheel and on the coaster in the Soul sequence. Once the song ends, it does go dark again, which is, again, that's one of my pet peeves. But at least they do have a transition from Soul to Coco. They have Joe walking, and then he falls in the sewer. But when he lands as Miguel. So at least they attempted a transition, and it was pretty creative. So I appreciate it, even though it did cut to black at one point. Coco is one of the strongest sequences in World of Color 1. Just like my boy Remy and my boy Joe, my boy Miguel is another great fit for World of Color 1 and the theme of starting waves. Because unlike Mirabel and not fitting in, Miguel didn't want to fit in because of his passion, and it ended up tying into his family. So Coco is a brilliant film. I love that movie, and it ties in really well with the themes of this nighttime spectacular. I like how in the show, the first conversation between Miguel and Hector is on the far right. Because, like, that is a moment in the film where they're, like, at their lowest. Like, they're low-key giving up hope. At least Hector is. So it's kind of appropriate that they're not center stage. This is by far the most emotional sequence in this show. Remember Me makes me a little misty-eyed. So it's very, very cute. I really, really love it. But Hector's wave inspired Miguel. So it works brilliantly with this show. At the end of the sequence, I really like how the lights follow Dante in the projections. Like, they just use the lights on the fountains without using the actual fountains to project on the water screens. I thought that was pretty interesting. So this is like the peak of World of Color 1 right here, because right after this is the Star Wars sequence, and it kind of goes off the rails from here. The show actually opened with a little interlude that brought back the theme song to kind of soften the blow between Coco and Star Wars, but they since cut that part out. So they just go straight from Coco into Star Wars. And Star Wars basically derails the entire show, because the Star Wars sequence is basically just a montage. It's the original trilogy up to the end of The Force Awakens, including The Mandalorian. So it's just kind of like a celebration of Star Wars out of nowhere. And if you didn't know, live action characters, like real human beings, don't work that well on the water projections, which is why Fantasmic and World of Color use a lot of animated films, because it just works so much better on the water screens. So to solve that, they do the same thing that the intro did, where they just have pictures of the characters, and it's so bad. Oh my gosh, I hate it. Like, I love the music. Who doesn't love Star Wars music? But the visuals are very, very underwhelming. Also, it doesn't connect, like, at all. Like, it's literally a montage of an entire movie trilogy plus a spin-off TV show, and then the one Star Wars episode that Disney made that didn't cause an absolute riot on the internet, which is so excessive. So it's just a very bizarre sequence. I do like at the beginning how the lightsabers like ignite, like you got the green and the red, so that's a pretty cool visual. Right after that, I do like how you can see the projections before the water screens even turn on, because they can project on the mist of falling fountains, which is really, really cool. I love when World of Color does that, when any of the World of Color shows do that. But it's just a very, very strange sequence. It just kind of gives the vibe of, yeah, Star Wars! Don't you love Star Wars? Oh my gosh, it's Luke Skywalker! It's a speeder! It's Luke Skywalker with a lightsaber! It's Leia! It's Obi-Wan! I can't believe it! It's lasers! It's the Millennium Falcon! Oh my gosh! Can you believe it? At Disney, there's Star Wars? Chewie! It's the Millennium... It's the cockpit! Punch it! Oh my gosh, we're going to light speed! But yeah, the point is that it just came out of nowhere, you know? Like, what? Why? The answer to the why is probably because an executive mandated that there was a Star Wars sequence in this World of Color show. The only IPs they used in Wondrous Journeys in the other park were related to Walt Disney Studios, so they kind of had to shoehorn in Star Wars and Marvel, which will come later, into World of Color 1 because Disney 100 was celebrating 100 years of Disney. You can't mention 100 years of Disney without bringing up Star Wars and Marvel, two of the most successful franchises of all time, which of course are part of this massive corporation. So that's kind of tough for World of Color 1, but it is what it is. During that little screaming rant I had, I noticed that the lights on the wheel match with the jump into light speed. I think that's really, really cool. The lighting on the fountains is really well done. But this celebration of Star Wars came out of nowhere. Like, up to this point, aside from the Encanto sequence, in my opinion, the show was very well connected to the theme of the theme song and the show as a whole. And this is just like a montage for no reason. And I do think it's hilarious that they cut out The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. I'm fine with leaving out Rise of Skywalker, but I might trigger so many people by saying this, but The Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie. And the way you reacted to that film was absolutely ridiculous. That's just my opinion, though. Please don't unsubscribe. Call me crazy in the comments if you want. But it is kind of cute that Baby Yoda did get some representation. When he shows up on the screen, like, sometimes your audience will be like, "Aw, it's so cute, it's Baby Grogu," you know? And it is kind of surreal seeing a Disney Plus episode come to life in the World of Color fountains. Like, that's just absolutely wild. But that's Disney using their corporate synergy. The sequence ends with Rey holding up the lightsaber to Luke. I like how Rey is on the right and Luke is on the far left. So that is pretty cute. But again, this has nothing to do with the rest of the show. And then World of Color 1 is going to use the Star Wars sequence as an excuse to jump into other franchises that don't really have anything to do with starting waves. One of those being Lion King. Lion King is another franchise that also has a sequence in the original World of Color show. And in my opinion, this one is nowhere near as good as the Lion King sequence in the original World of Color. You could make the argument that Mufasa's waves influenced Simba. Mufasa was the one that started the waves, but Simba's character arc of living up to the legacy of a king doesn't really start waves. You know, you're just kind of a ripple, so the main character not being the one to start the wave is kind of messy, in my opinion. Also, the Mufasa lasers in the fountain do look a little goofy. They do have that sequence with Rafiki and Simba, which is pretty cute, and then it starts a little musical sequence, it's a vibe. It's pretty cute. Fountain imagery could have been a lot better. Like, it's just kind of red and yellow blobs. Like, this sequence overall is just lacking impact, especially from such an impactful movie, which is The Lion King. And then Lion King will lead you straight into Mulan. There's an okay transition with a sword, which begins the Mulan sequence. In terms of music, they picked Reflection, even though it's a training sequence in the actual show. So that is a little messy. Like, the training sequence in the film is Make a Man Out of You is controversial for Disney now, which I didn't even realize until someone pointed it out to me in the comments. That's a shame. I do like the moment with the avalanche, the lighting from the coaster to the fountains themselves, like having that ripple is really, really cool. Also, the avalanche and ripples / waves, those kind of go hand in hand. And of course, Mulan was the one who started the avalanche, so that works pretty well. Mulan as a character is a better fit than Simba and Mirabel. I feel like she's closer to my boys, Remy, Joe, and Miguel. So that works pretty well. And then there is a great transition into the next sequence, which is the Moana scene. This sequence has 3 distinct parts. The third one just kind of comes out of nowhere. The first one is the conversation with her grandma. I like how the fountains embody the ocean at one point on the left-hand side. And then the second part of this sequence is the I Am Moana song. And then they have the lava monster, which kind of comes out of nowhere. The fire effects are cool though for any World of Color show. In the case of World of Color 1, it is this sequence. It's kind of forced. The show was kind of forced to have a climax out of nowhere because they already had that strange Star Wars montage. So they just made Moana the climax of the show. This sequence works better than The Lion King in terms of theme, but it still feels like Moana's character is about living up to legacy and solving a crisis instead of starting a wave like Walt Disney, as we have mentioned many times in this video. So overall, it's just not my favorite part. It's kind of a messy sequence with the 3 separate parts. Like, they just put a lot of pressure on that lava monster sequence, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. Not the vibe. You compare that to the climax of the original World of Color show, which was the Lion King sequence with the stampede, and that just flowed so much better than this in World of Color 1. Not the vibe. And then the second corporate mandated sequence in World of Color 1 is, of course, the Avengers and the rest of Marvel. It opens with the portals, which is just kind of like, bruh. Hearing the Avengers theme in the context of like Infinity War or Endgame in the theater was really cool. That was a magical moment, but does not hit in World of Color 1, in my opinion. Again, with live action, they use a lot of silhouettes, and it's really messy, pretty bad. So the visuals in this sequence are ugly, not my favorite. So I feel like that might be why the Avengers theme doesn't really hit emotionally, because the visuals are just so bad. But this sequence is very similar to the Star Wars sequence. It just kind of comes out of nowhere, and it has nothing to do with the rest of the show, other than Marvel being a significant part of 100 years of Disney. Like, the Avengers literally have nothing to do with making waves. Avenging someone or something is a response to a wave created by someone else, you know? But it's the exact same vibe of the Star Wars sequence. I do like the lighting on the wheel, mimicking the portals. I think that is pretty cute. But just like Star Wars, the same vibe is, oh my god, it's Marvel. I love Marvel. Black Panther is amazing. It's one of my favorite movies. I can't believe it. Oh my gosh, who's that? It's the Guardians of the Galaxy. I can barely tell because their silhouettes are so generic. It's Captain Marvel. Oh my gosh, I still haven't seen her second movie. Who is that? That's Iron Man. Oh my gosh, he's dead. I can't believe it. It's Spider-Man. His ride at Islands of Adventure is so good. Who is this? I can't even... Oh, that's Hawkeye. I can't tell because it's just another dude. And his silhouette is so generic. Oh my god, it's Doctor Strange. I can't believe it. Doctor Strange is so cool. It's the Hulk. And then this sequence ends with freaking Thor. So, yeah, it is what it is. It's a pretty bad transition into the finale. And just like the intro, the finale is probably one of the strongest parts of World of Color 1. This finale, the beginning of the finale, is excellent. It's very strong. And I feel like the longer the finale goes, the worse and worse it gets. The bubble imagery reminds me a lot of Florida's Fantasmic, and the bubble sequence in Florida's Fantasmic is one of my least favorite parts of that show, so not great. Again, I love the theme for World of Color 1. I think it's very well done. I don't like how the theme song ends though, which ties into the sequence itself. It gets weaker and weaker as it gets closer to the end. It dies a slow death. The finale sequence actually had a Walt Disney quote.
I just want to leave you with this thought. It's just been a sort of dress rehearsal. We're just getting started.
It just takes one.
But they cut it and they replaced it by more narration from the generic narrator. And the narration itself is very on the nose, so that is kind of funny.
No matter who you are or where you're from, you have the power to make a difference. It just takes one.
In the sequence itself, they had characters from each sequence show up in the projections. I like when Rey shows up, which they actually included Star Wars in the finale, which was funny, unlike the intro. It's also funny that they included Rey because Rey was like barely in the montage because most of it was the original trilogy. Maybe it could be a possibility that they reworked the Star Wars sequence to include more of the original trilogy, even though those films were not made when Disney owned Star Wars. But the lightsaber colors are cool when Rey shows up. I think it's funny that because Samuel L. Jackson said one thing one time, there is a purple fountain in the show. So that's kind of hilarious. There's a ripple. There's a man starting a wave. Like, he said one thing to George Lucas one time, and because of that, there's a purple fountain in this water show that we're talking about years and years later. That's hilarious. And then in the climax of the music and towards the end of the finale, Awkwafina comes out of nowhere, even though she was not in the show at all. She says something, and it just kind of throws off my vibe.
It may feel impossible, but sometimes you just have to take the first step.
Just let the music take over. Don't cut to a character saying something stupid. Ruins it for me. Just let the music finish strong, you know? It started so well, and it just fell apart at the end with this moment and the narration that we talked about earlier. So it totally just fumbles at the end. Plus, the fountains at the very end of the show are not the coolest from a visual perspective. And that is World of Color 1. What I like about all of the World of Color shows is that there's a post-show sequence. Like for the fireworks at Disney, you might have a little projection. And for Fantasmic, it just goes dark, and then you have the music. But for World of Color, the fountains don't turn off immediately. They stay on, but it's nothing too interesting. So if you want to leave right away, you're not going to miss anything. But it's a cool little thing to watch if you're just waiting for people to file out, just like the original World of Color. I do like how the one logo pops up, just like the original World of Color. That logo pops up at the end of that show. And as I said, I love the idea of a post-show. This post-show is much more elaborate than the original post-show. The wave imagery continues with the little ripple, and then the ripple kind of develops. The fountains start doing waves, and then a light ripple, and then they start swaying, and then when one starts swaying, more of them start swaying. So, you know, it just takes one to start a wave, all that jazz. And then at the end of the post-show, there is another fountain that bows at the end, which is very cute. That is a Walt Disney reference, and of course it ties into the intro sequence, which also had a bowing fountain. And just to finish it off, once the fountain's turned off, there is once again very on-the-nose narration.
We hope you have enjoyed World of Color 1. Remember, no matter who you are or where you're from, you have the power to make a difference. Make your way.
Very, very silly, in my opinion. Before we wrap things up, we're going to rank the sequences in World of Color 1, just like we rank the sequences for Mickey's Mixed Magic and, of course, Wondrous Journeys. Starting things off at number 11 is the Marvel sequence. Pretty bad. As I said, it doesn't tie in with the rest of the show. The visuals are pretty ugly, and it feels like it was just a corporate mandate to include Marvel. And also, the other corporate mandated sequence is number 10, which is Star Wars. Very, very similar to the Marvel sequence. A vast majority of this sequence is the original trilogy, which were films that were not created when Disney owned Star Wars, which I guess doesn't, I don't know, that's a nitpick, but still, it's kind of silly. Moving on to number 9 is Lion King. This is much, much weaker than the Lion King sequence in the original World of Color. The visuals are not great. And also the themes of Simba as a character don't fit in with a lot of these other characters, in my opinion. If you disagree, I would love to hear why. If you have a different opinion than I do, in the comments down below, please let me know. On a very similar note, number 8 is the Encanto sequence. This music, I forgot the song even existed. When I first watched World of Color 1, I was like, don't remember this song at all, which is kind of funny. And again, Mirabel is in the same camp as Simba, where it doesn't work that well. Number 7 is the Mulan sequence. Reflections probably wasn't the best fit from a musical perspective, but I do like the training sequence, and of course the avalanche is really cool visually, and Mulan as a character is a perfect fit for World of Color 1. Moving on to number 6 is the Ratatouille sequence. My boy Remy, great fit, perfect fit. The visuals in this sequence are really, really good, aside from the Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower is kind of ugly, and it looks a little goofy, as I discussed. Number 5 is Pocahontas. This is a perfect follow-up to the intro sequence, because that very literal discussion about waves and ripples. So it handles that transition from an intro sequence to IP very, very well. Moving on to number 4 is Soul. Just like our boy Remy and Mulan, our boy Joe, great fit. And I do like the lighting throughout this sequence, even though I'm not a fan of jazz music, but I'm glad my boy Joe is. Moving up to number 3 is the intro. I think it's pretty well done, aside from the narration. As I've said many times, this theme song is great. That also applies to number 2, which is the finale. As we discussed, it starts so strong and it just kind of falls apart at the end. So it could have been so much better if they like reworked it. If they got rid of Raya and the Last Dragon, which came out of nowhere for no reason. And they got rid of that narration as well. And of course, number 1 is the heart of the show. It is the Coco sequence. It was very, very, very well done, in my opinion. So that is World of Color 1. Do you think this show is going away forever? I would love to know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think Disney is going to bring it back? It's been a while since Disney has shown the original World of Color, and it's going to be even longer because they're debuting World of Color Happiness for the 70th celebration of Disneyland Park. It'll be interesting to see if World of Color Happiness will be better. Do you think it'll be better? Please let me know down in the comments below. If this video does well, I'll try to make a video about World of Color Happiness. Please let me know if you would like that. And I'm really interested to see if these World of Color shows are going to be constant. Something else that's coming up is the 50th anniversary of the release of A New Hope. So that maybe they'll do a Star Wars World of Color, which would be really, really funny. But I'd love to know when the original World of Color, when that's coming back. Actually, I just checked the Disney website for World of Color Happiness. And World of Color Happiness is also presented by Pandora. So we got that to look forward to. Joy. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like this video. Please let me know in the comments down below what you think of this video. If you agree with my opinions on World of Color 1, where you disagree with me. Please like this video and subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I will catch you later.